purity culture was obviously a good attempt at creating a sexual ethic, or good in the sense that it was trying to counter the cultural sexual revolution. I get that. But yes, it largely equated purity with virginity, and set up this false idea that you had purity you could lose, right? When we already know the gospel is you get purity from Jesus.
Yes.
That's the only way we're pure. You don't have something that you'll lose, and nor is it just the sexualized version of virginity. And then all the horrible things of, like, your chewed up gum and your duct tape that's lost its sticky side, which is just not true.
Friends, welcome back to the Caleb Gordon Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Gordon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be a part of the program. Listen, tonight we're going to talk about sex. And immediately everybody starts getting squeamish and going, uh-oh, whoa, what are we doing now? Listen, your sexuality is worth a better conversation. And I'm sitting down tonight with author and therapist Sam Jolman. He is the author of The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. And I'm telling you, I think this is the conversation that Christians need to have. This is the book that Christians need to get their hands on. I think this is going to be beneficial. It's going to edify us. It's going to open up some stuff that I think needs to be opened up. The conversations that we need to have, I think it's going to be an amazing topic, and a better conversation is needed. So I pray that this encourages you and it challenges you this week. Love you. Welcome to the Caleb Gordon Podcast, Mr. Sam Jolman. How in the world are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Caleb. Thanks for having me.
Man, fantastic. How is the state of Colorado?
We are doing well today. We had 70 something. So I mean, it feels like, man, let's just go.
Summer's here. Yeah.
Right. But I also know there's several snowstorms between us and summer. So yeah.
I preached in Wyoming one time, and it was 4th of July week, and I looked out the window and it was dumping snow on, at the place where I was, this camp we were at. And I was like,
that's impressive.
I forgot about it snowing this high up. So what part of Colorado are you in?
Colorado Springs.
Oh, so do you know Ryan Dobson?
Yeah.
He and I are really good friends. Ryan's a good friend.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
Ryan's a good friend. He's actually come and preached at my church a couple times, and we're good friends.
He's friends of friends. So
very cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Look at us. We're networking, and you never know. It's wild.
Yeah.
Right? So cool. A friend of mine who is a spiritual mentor and actual basketball coach from when I was in junior high, turned me onto your book, and I have been fascinated with this topic because, man, the church is such a weird place when it comes to the idea of sex. We start talking about sex and everybody starts immediately going, oh, we get nervous, right?
Yeah.
And I love the tagline that I saw, especially on your website, that your sexuality deserves a better conversation. And I was like, this is perfect. I love it. It's great. So I wanted to just talk to you just a few minutes today about your book and about some of the things that go on in your book. So just sort of kind of give us, before we just jump in, give us a 30,000 foot view. Who is Sam? And what are you about, man?
Yeah. So I say I'm a lover, a father, a therapist, and a writer, kind of in that order. So okay. I'm a husband. My wife Amanda and I are just about to hit 22 years of marriage.
Yes.
So yes, in a week. And we have 3 boys. So I'm a father of the 3 up and coming young men. One is 13, 11, and 8.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's rowdy in the best sense.
Yes,
and,
it's the best stuff, brother.
It's the good years. So, and then I'm a therapist. I've been a therapist for 20 years. I counsel men, married couples, and also specialize in sexual abuse recovery.
Yeah.
And then I'm a writer. So my first book, The Sex Talk You Never Got, came out last summer, and I write on Substack, and Consider that a joy,
Yes.
as well as a passion. It does involve suffering, as all passions do. But
Sure.
and I love Jesus. I forgot to
Yes.
add that. So yes, and have been a Christian since high school, and man, in the rowdy thing that is the kingdom of God.
That's fantastic. I love it. That's great. So you've got this new book. We're coming up on the year. We're right at a year, right?
Yes. No. June. So
So June will
yeah,
be a year. Fantastic.
Yeah, a
So
few months away.
one of the things that I have been connected in men's ministry for several years, almost about 17 years total now, and I have a heart and a desire to help men. And often, what is sold in Christian circles when it comes to sexuality is there's a ton of misconceptions. And one of the biggest misconceptions or unspoken issues about sex in is that Christian couples and marriages they don't really talk about it. And so
Yeah.
what do you see as one of the biggest misconceptions and unspoken issues in this topic of sex?
Yeah, for men, like you said, it's not something. It's probably the place we have had the least meaningful conversations in our lives. As a Christian men, maybe we've been in circles of accountability, so where it's largely about, are you behaving or not behaving? To what
Yes.
degree are you behaving? And within Christian circles, the biggest misconception is that everything that moves in you sexually as a man is lust or the beginnings of lust.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this high value and intense focus on sexual purity, primarily about lust. And there's such a suspicion in that of the body, of you're always a half step from lust. It's every man's battle, and it's so desperate, and it really, at one level, over sexualizes men and says that everything that's happening in you is probably the beginnings of lust. It also condemns men for what I would say is largely just often noticing the beauty of another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know I think most men see it as, I'm lusting whenever I notice beauty. Let's say in a woman at Starbucks, or the gas station, island, gas pump island. Like there's a sense
Absolutely.
that
Yes.
that must be lust. And there's no blessing of, you were actually made to be moved
Mm.
by the glory of God in the world, including in other people. So, that beautiful sunset you saw last night, or the beautiful person that you saw, you know, at the gas station. There's often, I would say, just that sense that God made you to fall in love with his world and the beauty of his world, and his glory is everywhere, including in other people. So I had a friend that said, this was last year when Caitlin Clark was still in the NCAA March Madness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, I'm really drawn to watching Caitlin Clark play basketball. And is it lust? Is that's what's happening in me? And I just love her finesse. I love her sportsmanship, her athleticism. And he said, I don't think it's sexual outright, like lustful. I'm just in awe of her.
Sure.
And I would say, yeah, that's not lust. It sounds like you're honoring the glory of God in her skill, in her presentation, and something obviously she's worked very hard at. But she does have a finesse and a kind of effortlessness, right, to her, as an athlete. So, again, I think as we're talking about male sexuality, we don't often make space for blessing the goodness of God in your design as a man, that you were made to be moved by the sensuality of life, by the goodness of God's glorious world.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, because I grew up and man, I owned multiple copies. I gave away some of the copies of Every Man's Battle, and I read it. And man, I did. Man, just everything. Anytime I looked and saw a woman, I was just like, oh, I got to dart my eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it is a struggle. Am I committing lust? Am I doing these things? Am I
right?
What am I? Am I a failure? And so,
Right.
and then we don't want to talk about it. So we just like, I don't want people to know I failed. I don't want people to know I mess up. I don't want people to know, like, am I doing this wrong? What am I doing wrong? And so that's, I
Yeah.
think when we step into that, because then we bring that into when we get married, and then we have this idea and so then when you see your wife with no clothes on, and you're just like, okay, what do I do with this? This is especially
Right.
in the Christian world, you're just like, crud. Can I think my wife's sexy? Is that okay? Is it, is it weird?
Right.
Is it dirty? And so we have this, because under the purity culture, man, true love waits and all this stuff. One of the most destructive things I think in the world was true love waits, because
Yeah.
it painted sex unbiblically, and
Hmm.
it terrified everybody, and
Hmm.
everybody had the ring,
Hmm.
and
Right.
and most of us blew it,
Right.
and then you're like, crud, now I've blown it. Now what do I do?
Right.
How do I get this back? And so
Right.
how is it that this book that you've written can break the silence to encourage a more open, healthy dialogue about sexuality and intimacy within the covenant of marriage?
Yeah. Purity culture was obviously a good attempt at creating a sexual ethic, or good in the sense that it was trying to counter the cultural sexual revolution. I get that. But yes, it largely equated purity with virginity, and set up this false idea that you had purity you could lose, right? When we already know the gospel is you get purity from Jesus.
Yes.
That's the only way we're pure. You don't have something that you'll lose, and nor is it just the sexualized version of virginity, and then all the horrible things of, like, your chewed up gum and your duct tape that's lost its sticky side, which is just not true of human sexuality. You don't lose your ability to bond just because you've, quote, fallen into sin sexually, right? That's not how human hearts work. You can still bond. Now, you might have to have conversations with God and engage your sexual sin. There is
Mhm.
purity that we're called to, but
Yes.
it's in a far bigger story of what I say in the book is, you were made to be moved, and your heart as a lover, your heart as a sexual being mirrors so much your heart as a worshiper. And we equate and confuse in the body arousal with lust, arousal with desire. And arousal is a body state. It is different than desire. So your body being moved, as I said, by beauty, let's say, as you described, right, and your wife, right, is inherent to your arousal structure. You're simply being moved by the imprinting of your arousal structure,
Mhm.
what you were designed to be aroused by.
Yeah.
That's not a statement of desire. I like the Bible Project's translation of Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount. If any man looks lustfully at a woman, he's committing adultery. What they teased out there is this: the sentiment is a man that goes on looking for the sake of
Mm.
lust. In other words, there's an intentionality that he's joining. He's not just being moved by, wow, that's a beautiful woman,
Yeah.
right? And no, it's that he takes that and continues that with the desire to covet
Right,
or
because that
lust.
that was the thing I wanted to really touch on. Because when we look at these things, when we look and if you say that you don't notice a beautiful woman as a man, you're lying. And
Yeah,
so it's just like, that's just the truth. But are you continuing to just stare, and does your mind wander into sinful mindsets?
right.
That's when it becomes a problem. But if it's oh wow, she's she's an attractive lady, but
Yes,
you don't have the intention to be like, man, I'd like to sleep with that. That's a different
right,
mentality, right? So
right.
yeah, go ahead. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
exactly. And I had a woman client, and who's given me permission to share this. She said to me one time, "Oh, I notice, the looks in the grocery store,
Mhm.
from a guy." And she said it's actually flattering to me when I notice a guy looking at me,
Right,
and noticing my beauty. It's flattering. And then she's paused, and she got more serious, and she said, "But then there's those other looks."
right.
the creepy ones.
Yeah.
And she goes, those feel horrible.
Right.
And so, as a woman, they can
They can
tell.
sense that. Yeah, absolutely. They
Yes.
can tell. They can be like, okay, this dude's totally being a creeper. And then the other guy just like, oh, wow. Okay. And so
Yeah.
it's a completely different thing. And there, I think that there is a fine line, but
Yes.
we don't need to have this condemnation constantly of guys that are just, oh my gosh, you're doing horrible things all the time. Don't look, don't ever look. Like
Right.
that's almost impossible. So yeah.
Right. 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 Exactly.
Yeah. I really think it's fascinating that so many couples don't actually talk about sex together. Like once you get it, because we have moved from this purity culture mindset, and people don't talk about it in marriage, and then there's this unrealistic expectation. Because most guys, when they come into marriage, they're sold the bill of goods by the church that, listen, all the time. It's going to happen all the time. And that's not necessarily true. And then we've got other literature that comes out that says, listen, if you want to get some play, just do some dishes and everything's going to be awesome. Then you do the dishes and you have that expectation because you read it in a book and you're like, I did the dishes, woman. What? Why are you not willing to do this with me? And so we build this frustration, but I think it's healthy. Like this is the one thing my wife and I have an open dialogue, and we talk about sexuality in our marriage constantly. Like we set aside time where we're eating dinner, we go and we'll talk about these things and what we like, what we don't like. And I think that's good and healthy and right. So can you talk about that mindset of why it is such a problem for couples, especially in the church, not to talk about sex together?
Yeah. I think we have this inherent shame, right, around conversations of sexuality, that sexuality in itself feels dirty or bad. And again, that idea that, anything that moves in me must be beginnings of lust, so I have to shut it down. Or for a woman to believe, well, I'm probably causing a man to stumble and I need to be terrified and always kind of guarding my body. And there's no room to be a sexual being well. So shame inherently shuts us down. It will bring you to silence. It will cause you to hide. So what you're inviting is very beautifully vulnerable conversations. As I say in my book, sex in itself, I believe, is a form of play. It mirrors the studied elements of play, of healthy play. And I think it's meant to have that kind of playful, it's a place our love was meant to play. Now, not the only place, right? We were meant to play in other ways, but it is a unique one and a beautiful one given to married couples. And in that sense, then it's meant to be, like you said, well, what do you like? What do you not like? That there could be this sense of honoring each other's eroticism or, giving and receiving of pleasure as an act of love. But that requires a connectedness to our bodies. That requires a freedom of desire. And again, what we're bumping up against is that all of us at some level battle shame, sexual shame. And I'm not just saying sexual sin, right? Like sexual guilt, but that evil, the realm of evil, hates your sexuality. It hates your sexuality because it mirrors your heart's design to be a passionate lover and a passionate worshiper of God. So evil wants to shut that down. Evil does not want you to know that God made you for goodness and pleasure. So it will, as it did, to Adam and Eve, the realm of evil will try to bring shame as quickly and as early as possible in your life against your sexuality, right? How? Well, through a myriad of things, right? Not just temptation. In fact, I would say early on, primarily through wounding, right? Condemnation through, it could be as extreme as, the harm of sexual abuse.
Right.
But it could also be the subtlety of stories that just left you feeling embarrassed.
Sure.
Or foolish, or, oh, I'm an idiot, or I must be a pervert, or I'm dirty. or my body's ugly, right? I mean, again, can you start to hear evil's narration?
Yeah.
And so, I just want to say you both have fought clearly for some level of freedom from shame, that you have allowed such a beautifully open conversation in your marriage. But that takes effort.
It didn't come overnight. Like it wasn't an overnight thing. We've been married almost 20 years, and it didn't happen overnight. It was, I mean, there was, in the beginning, we struggled and having these conversations, because I felt like this. I was like, oh, I don't know, because I grew up in the church, and I was just like, okay, is it weird to talk about this? Is it weird to want this? Is it weird? Like,
right.
and so I had these difficult conversations early on. And what's wild is, as I've been pastoring, hearing the stories of people that have been married for 30, 40, 50 years who have struggled for decades, and they've missed out on so much fun.
Right. Yep.
And they're like genuine, and people say, you said it was fun, but sex was supposed to be fun. It is fun. And so for people to like freak out and go, it's not supposed to be fun, like, you're not doing it right, bro.
Right.
So I just think that it's one of those things that, and that's even something we've had really open conversations with our adult kids. Like, we have 3 adult children, and 2 of them are married, and they've moved out, and got married, and we've had those open conversations with our kids for a hot minute, and it's been freeing. Sometimes it's awkward, but I think we've been conditioned not to have awkward conversations and hard conversations, but I think it's necessary, because it brings freedom. It brings the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can't, it runs when you have these kind of conversations. And so that is, I think, so important that couples have these kind of conversations. And like I said, Ryan Dobson was one of those guys that really pushed in on me and was talking to me about these things. He's like, bro, this is supposed to be fun.
Yes.
So I was like, you're right. It is supposed to be fun.
Right. You have 8 to 10,000 nerve endings in your genitalia.
Oh, wow.
Both men and women. You have 4,000 taste buds. So again, sex was meant to be doubly as pleasurable as the best meal you've had. Come on. Right? Just by the number of nerve endings. Yes. In other words, God intended you to enjoy the pleasure and goodness of life.
It's almost like He designed it that way.
Right. But again, I'm, certainly, as you've said, we understand that not everybody experiences it as pleasurable. And I've talked with couples, one couple that said to me, we didn't know for 10 years into marriage that a woman could orgasm. Nobody told us. They came out of purity culture. They had no idea that she could also orgasm.
He did, but she couldn't, and she didn't, or she didn't. It's not that she couldn't. They never explored sex. Wow.
Nor in conversation, as you've said well, right?
Yeah.
That there is an assault on pleasure. Am I saying that evil kept them from that? Well, at some level, right? Evil does not want you enjoying the goodness that God made you for.
Come on.
And I one way you've said well is there needs to become a bravery. I'm going to risk awkward or hard conversations.
Yes.
That's certainly, something that all of us have to endeavor. The other thing I'd invite you to is pay attention to your shame. Follow your shame. It will lead you to where evil has assaulted and lied to you.
Yes.
So, it's not just, sometimes you just need to push through the awkward. Other times you actually need to stop and say, what is the shame I'm feeling? What am I feeling dirty? Am I feeling perverted? Right? And why? When did I begin to feel that about my own body or my own sexuality? Right? That kind of curiosity will begin to lead you to places where you've known the harm of evil and the deception of evil, so that you can heal.
Just wanted to say thank you to one of our amazing sponsors, Revo Financial. For many people, financial stewardship isn't just about smart financial decisions. It's about aligning those decisions with their faith and values. Revo Financial brings biblical wisdom to the financial planning and investment process. Whether you're planning for retirement, college, or special charitable strategies, Revo Financial helps you create a roadmap that aligns your spiritual values. Visit revofinancial.com and set up your complimentary one-on-one appointment today and start building a future that honors your faith. Revo Financial.
So sometimes you actually need to pause and say, I can't push through this. I need to be curious about it more. So like you said, it's hard work. And it's not always, well, just go for it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's sometimes literally in the act of sex, there's a need to pause and say, you went away. Where did you go?
Oh, wow.
You suddenly you don't seem playful anymore.
Yeah.
What happened? Right? That's some of the tender conversation we need to be able to foster with each other in marriage. Yes. So that it can become more playful and free.
Love that. It's so good. So I want to switch gears for just a minute, and I want to hit on the idea of porn. I want to talk about pornography because, man, that is, I don't think we understand how absolutely, and you're talking to a former guy that looked at porn all through college, up into I'm 46 this year, up into my early 40s. And I just on and off. In my early 20s, I was just watching. And so I can understand why guys like it. But let's talk about how it destroys marriages and how husbands and wives can find healing from the destructive tentacles and nature of porn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, porn needs to be understood as, I think a lot of guys, experience it. And certainly in my own journey, it felt like it was, well, this is just, you have an abundance of desire and it just sort of overflows again, right? Like I'm just overflowing with sexual desire and it spills out into looking at porn. And what I would say is, porn, is for most men that I talk with, porn does not begin as sexual desire. It begins as emotional dysregulation. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
Most porn use is an attempt to soothe the body from some other stressor. So most guys, and I'm not saying most men are aware of this, but that there's something in their life that makes them emotionally dysregulated, stressed, disappointed, shut down, embarrassed, numb, something.
Now that you just saying that right now just pulls up some memories of just when I would go often run to that kind of stuff. I was in the middle of some sort of a stressful moment or some sort of a high anxiety moment where I wanted to disconnect, and it was I could shut my brain off to a degree and then just stare.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. You just triggered something there. So sorry.
Go ahead. And that's every man. So in a lot of ways, what I would say is it's largely not a overabundance of sexual desire problem. It's largely my body's dysregulated by something, and I'm going here to soothe. Mm. So I talked to a high-powered attorney who would daily use porn in the afternoon to de-stress. And he had no idea when we started therapy what it was, right? But we began to understand it wasn't just physical, meaning like I just need to de-stress. But I would say it's also very connected to your story. So what you are looking for mirrors so much the imprint of your story, what shaped you in your own sexual story. So let me give an example. Okay. I had a man come to me. He was leaving work to drive home. He's a contractor, and his wife wanted him to get some things at the grocery store. He goes, he makes the stop. He comes home, finds out he forgot a couple things on her list that she had sent him. She's disappointed in him. She's frustrated. She's trying to make dinner, and now she can't do that. Later that night, so they have a fight.
Yeah.
Later that night, he looks at porn. He comes to me the next week for counseling, confesses I looked at porn. So I start to ask questions like, well, what happened? Well, and he tells the story I just told you. So then I ask the next question, which is, what did you look at? Now, this is a guy that has been with me for a while. And, you might think right away, well, that's what I'm trying to forget. I'm trying to forget what I looked at, right? I'm trying to get those images out of my head.
It's
But
helpful to find healing.
right. It's helpful to find healing, to be curious about what you were looking for.
Yeah.
So this man had done a little bit of work. So he knew what to be thinking about. He said, if I'm honest, I was looking for a woman with a really genuine smile. Whoa.
Wow.
Right.
That's like, because most guys, when they're looking at porn, they're like, I want to see breasts, I want to see butt, I want, something like that.
Right.
Like that's the mindset. It's
right.
So, wow. Okay. Let's
right. He was
out.
saying, I wanted to find a woman who seemed like she had a genuine smile.
And I think that's the thing. I think when we jump into porn, we're looking, it's safe. They're never going to talk back to you negatively. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be an invitation where in marriage, it can sometimes be, not tonight, I've got a headache. Not tonight, it was a stressful day. I know it was a stressful day. I want to de-stress with you, sweetheart. and I don't think most women understand that. So that jumps into that whole idea is it's an invitation. Porn is an invitation that never, wow.
Well, and again, can you start to hear this man, it's not that much to make the connection to the fight with his wife earlier, right? Right? His wife was mad at him. What did he want? He wanted a woman who would be pleased with him. But rather than going to his wife and working it out, it was easier to go, like you said, where I have control.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be rejected because his wife might not be ready to make up from that fight. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So it was easier to go to porn. Then it went further. He said, if I'm honest, the only time I remember getting my mother's smile was when I gave her back rubs. And she would share with me all of her heartache about my father, about her day. So can you start to hear the ache for a woman's genuine smile? It was about that fight that night, but it was also about this man's story. That he only ever got his mother's smile when he pleased her, when he did something for her, right? Can you hear the violation of that? And so, is he randomly just clicking when he's going on porn? No, right? What you look at is a massive clue. Most guys don't type in Google porn, right? Or whatever search engine or ever porn site. They're often a click or a hunt or a keyword. Mm-hmm. Those keywords are such massive clues to your own story, right? To what you're really longing for. Sex is never just about sex. It's never just a body, flinch like sneezing or a need for a yawn, or
even though that's what we're told. We're sold that bill of goods. That, it's just a clump of cells coming together and just we're just having a good time, right? So that's what's sold. So yeah, goodness gracious.
Right. But your heart is always there with you. So anyway, all of it is to say, one of the greatest things you can do, and this comes from my friend Jay Stringer, is spend an hour being curious about what you look at. Mm-hmm. Be curious about your lust. What turns you on? And particularly what turns you on in lust, or when you feel a draw, let's say, to pornography use, it will be a clue into your story and what you really long for.
Man, that's big. And I think if most men gravitated towards that, understood what freedom lies there.
Yes.
Man. And when we start, and listen, and here's one of the things that really I just made the decision, and it was not, and I don't want to sell it because we're on a podcast, as it was so easy and I just walked in and I did it. I told my wife, because I even in the beginning part of our marriage, I struggled with porn. And so I'd made the decision that when I had the desire, just to boop, like pop it up, and I hadn't even pulled my phone up, I haven't looked at it. I would text her and be like, "Baby, I'm struggling today, and I am wanting to look at porn today, and I'm just letting you know. Please pray for me. I'm letting you know." When she got home, it was she took care of things, and I was just like, because she understood, and it wasn't like, and then we talked that out. It wasn't just a, okay, we're gonna have sex and be done. It was a, why? Why do you think so, sweetheart? I don't know. I just, and it comes down to that. It was a stressful day, and work was wild. This happened, and it, man, listen. And when I've been able to have the conversation and just tell her those things, guess what? Less and less desire to want to look at it, because now I'm gonna tell her, and the first time I told her, she was just like, she admitted that hurt, and we had to walk through that too, because I'm not enough. I'm not enough for you. And so we had to have that conversation. But there's been so much healing over the years, because I just decided I'm tired of being exhausted and full of shame. And I think if men would just get past that, and I don't want to sell it as it was easy. It wasn't. It took hours of conversation. And I think most men don't want to have those hours of conversation. So
yes. And and again, it can be your wife. What you're naming is the emotional intimacy, right? Of regulating your body a different way than sex, or sexual acting out, we could say, right? And that may be, for some men, the burden to their wives is too much, right? To be their accountability person, because she's so on the line, right? She will feel the wounds of your acting out. And so, for some men, the emotional intimacy that you beautifully fostered with your wife needs to start with other men, right? Some place
100%.
where you're divulging your life. It may not be able to be your wife. But you're naming so well that you are actually regulating your body with your wife. I had a woman that said to me, again, she's given me permission. She said, I always knew what kind of day my husband had based on how he had sex with me.
Ooh.
And he would not talk to her about his day. But she said, I knew there were days when he had a bad day because I felt like the thing that he had to conquer that night.
Ooh.
Like I became the W, the win that he needed for that day. Right. And she said it felt terrible.
Sure.
And I've thought about that guy since and thought, what would it have been if he just came home and talked to her about his bad day?
Yep.
Right. How much better their sex life could have been.
Well,
right. Whether they had sex or not that night.
Exactly.
Maybe he wouldn't have felt the need, as much. So I love what you're naming, which is I'm letting somebody into my emotional life, right? That I'm not needing to regulate it with pornography use.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to say that it would, always, because sometimes maybe it's not a safe space to go with your wife right away. Maybe you need to talk to a pastor, or maybe you talk to another man. I would encourage you, find another man that you can talk to. I'm blessed that I got a great wife. Yeah. Some guys don't have that. And they're like, if I told my wife, I would have a divorce like that. So go talk to a pastor. So that's, So we've got just a few minutes left here. If people are interested, like I think every man needs to get their hands on this book. If they want to get their hands on the book, how do they do that? Find out more about you and your ministry and what you're doing.
So the book is anywhere you buy your books. Independent bookstore in your town obviously would be awesome, but Amazon, Barnes and Noble, et cetera, it's everywhere you buy your books. If you want, my publisher's actually giving a buy one, get one free offer still since the book launched. So if you go to my website, Sam Jolman, SAMJOLMAN.com, you can get a free buy one, get one free offer there. They'll send you a free paperback copy. You can also get a free chapter if you sign up for my Substack. If you want to try it out before you buy it, just sign up. I'm writing on Substack, and for signing up, you get a free copy of the book, or a free copy of the first chapter.
Love it. Well, Sam, thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for shedding light on this topic that desperately needs to be talked about. I appreciate you more than you know. And it has been a blessing to get to talk to you and get to know more about you. So thank you for being a part of the program today.
Caleb, thank you so much. I love your passion. I love your passion for people, and this topic has been a great honor to be here.
Blessings. Hey, my friends, thanks for tuning in to this podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, check out calebgordon.org for all the other episodes that are out there, anything that I've written, anything that I have podcast-wise, and I pray that it blesses you and it encourages you. Love y'all.